Can there be hope and healing after you've had an abortion? What you need to know. Coming up next on the Woman to Woman Show. Hi, I'm Luann. Welcome to the Woman to Woman Show. And we have a group here that's going to talk about after abortion healing, what you may not know, and something you need to hear about. We have with us today, we have Lori Eckstein from Rachel's Vineyard Retreats. And what's your official title, Lori?
Project Rachel Coordinator.
Project Rachel Coordinator for Oregon, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. We're going to talk about Rachel's Vineyard. We have Tamara Johnson. Welcome back. You've helped us out before, and I appreciate it.
Nice to
and Graham Rintoul, who also has been a guest and also crew member, I might add. Faithful guy. Thank you so much for being here. I want to assume that the people have never heard of Rachel's Vineyard. You both have participated, and you run the program here and coordinate information for people and whatnot. Why don't you just start out by explaining exactly what Rachel's Vineyard Retreats are and what happens and what it's all about?
Rachel's Vineyard Retreats is a weekend that's a very intense process for people to go through the grieving for their unresolved grief and trauma from abortion. And it's very well designed to take people through a reconciliation with God, with their child, with themselves, and it's very effective in what it does. It's
right, and you mentioned reconciliation with God, so there is a spiritual component to this. What are the areas it touches on or can heal from?
It can heal all the root causes, the root effects from abortion, and that has to do with a lot of symptoms that we've been discussing, the anger, the depression, the numbness, the avoidance, denial. There's relationship problems. There's all the aftermath of an abortion,
which isn't exactly talked about in our society, is it, Tamara? Right. What brought you to come to a retreat like Rachel's Vineyard?
Well, I was going through I was on my 5th marriage. That's part of the problem. And my husband and I were going through a really rocky time, and I was really at a loss at that point. I didn't know what to do. My husband was gone for the week on a business trip, and I was home alone, crying, trying to figure out what to do. And I actually wrote a letter to this priest that I didn't even know. And we had a meeting. Yeah. And after speaking with me, he said, you know, we need to do some work. He goes, but I really think you need to go to this Rachel's Vineyard retreat, because I feel like a lot of your issues stem from that time in your life. And you really need to find healing, and you need to find forgiveness from God. And so he gave me this brochure, and that's how it all began.
And you had told him in your meeting that you had had an abortion at an early... Had you told many people before that?
My priest, well, and he wasn't even my priest, that's why I told him. He didn't know me. And
it helps sometimes.
It does. And my husband.
Those are the only people that
I've told.
Except your, of course, your parents, because yours happened when you were quite young.
Right, and the people that found out when I was young in high school.
Did your current husband know?
I told him, yes, but after we were married.
After you were married?
Absolutely, right.
The whole time you've been dating, it never...
No.
Came up. This was something that very buried, in other words. You're trying to
very much. And I was very ashamed, very guilt-ridden, so much in pain. I really didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it.
What was it like for you when you turn on the news or a vote comes up, and politically or socially the subject would come up in a room or anywhere you were? How did that affect you?
Anger, really.
Anger.
You know, because if you have to admit that it's wrong, you have to admit that you've done something really, really bad. And so a lot of times when you have had an abortion, you kind of go the other way. So I was very, very pro-choice. And I just, when I saw people on the street, praying, you know, in front of abortion
Yeah,
clinics.
right.
I was so angered because I thought, those people don't have a clue. You know, what if they had a child that was 14? You know, because that's what happened to me.
Right.
And, you know, going through this whole process, of course, you find out why all of these horrible things, you know, have come to be in my life because of all of the pain that abortion has caused. It doesn't solve a thing. It really creates problems. So.
And this is definitely the minority opinion. And Graham, you're even more of a minority in this subject area
Yep,
because
absolutely.
you participated in the Rachel's Vineyard retreat as one of the growing numbers of men
Right.
that are finding their voice on this issue. I am so excited that you are because I think it's so important. And obviously, somebody said every child has a mother and a father, you know, and this is so important that men speak out. What was the reason you went on this retreat?
I was actually waiting for a different program, but it was going to be some unknown number of months out.
Uh-huh.
And in the process of doing some research, I came across Rachel's Vineyard on a website. And I think I read everything on the site and finally found the calendar and Lori's phone number and email. And I figured email's safer. I'm going to send an email.
That is a good thing sometimes.
And consequently, after a couple of emails back and forth, I think Lori had the feeling it sounds like it might be time for this man and suggested we have a phone call.
Yeah.
And so we did, and some difficult questions were asked and answered, and within a few months, then still it was several months out before the next available retreat came along. So somewhere between May and November was the time lag between.
So you had an abortion experience in your past.
Right, and it was about 30, going on 32, 33 years ago.
No way. And were you married at the time?
No, I was single.
Okay. So had you told a lot of people about this?
Zero. No one knew.
Oh my
At least not that I told. I suspect there may have been some knowledge, but absolutely nobody knew. My first wife didn't know. My second wife didn't know. We were married 19 years before she found out.
You were married 19
Yep.
years before
Yep.
she found out.
I don't talk much.
Graham, no,
Yeah,
not you.
Not to make light of it,
That's
but
kinda
it didn't
typical
come up
guy,
in conversation, and certainly not something that men talk about.
Well, let me ask you this. How was it for you when this topic would come up, you know, socially or in the news or politically or you know, as it is out there, you know, or you'd walk by protesters? How did that affect you?
There's a word we use called ignorance. There's another one I use called ignorance. I simply ignored it.
Really?
So it was a denial component, which I learned later. And part of that denial was, let's pretend there's not sunflowers sitting on our table.
Okay. So we can just
So we
bury
can just
it
blank
again.
them out and hide it and just push it down.
Doesn't affect me.
No.
How typical is this, Lori? I mean, when you're hearing the stories of so many men and women now coming, calling you, reaching out, they have to first, of course, realize I'm hurting because of the abortion in order to even get to the point of talking to you, right?
Yeah.
That somebody needs to understand, for sure I know the abortion is causing my problems, or I think it might be, and then they come to you and you see, what is it almost always periods of denial and secrecy? Is secrecy a really big part of the
Yes.
abortion
Yes, it
experience?
is.
And you can't, is there any way you can say, oh, it's just only this group of people is involved, or people that are in this city, or only of this religion, or only of this age?
It crosses all barriers. Age, race, religion, socioeconomic, it crosses them all.
Okay, so there's no way to say any group is exempt from an abortion experience.
There's no way to say that. And in our belief in God and the way He's designed us, our belief has to be compatible with how He's created us. And it says we are all human beings and we all have the same reaction to something as traumatic and as painful as an abortion.
Well, I want to make sure, I want to talk more about what happens at the actual retreat. But before we take the break, I want to make sure people know, how do they find out more information? I know there's 1-800-HOPE-FOR-ME. Is that right? And we'll run that on to get general information about Rachel's Vineyard. And then what is another good source to find out?
I believe the best source is the website.
Okay.
It's like what Graham was talking about. There's a lot of information that is growing all the time, the
Yeah.
body of information. And it gives people the chance to read as much as they can tolerate and let it go in, and they reflect on it and let
Yeah.
the grace work on them.
Oh,
And,
that's so true.
and then God has his ways of bringing other people or situations or things into their life that just keep moving them along the path toward making a decision to really actively engage in their healing.
So it's rachelsvineyard.org.
It is, yes.
So we'll run that on the screen, and people
Okay.
should go on there. If they get to the website and they feel like this is a step I want to take, I want to go ahead and do one of these retreats. Might get a receipt from the retreat, but receipts up with God, I think. But anyway, they just click on it and say I'm in. Is that all there is to it?
No,
No. Okay.
that's not.
Nothing's easy in this world, is it?
No.
No, you do kind of counsel people ahead of time.
Yeah, I have a conversation with them, and in a way, it is it's trying to reach out and touch. It's trying to reach out and grab someone who's down in the pit and saying, "Let me help you up here," and then let's go forward. So it has a lot to do with the human being to human being touch of
yeah.
understanding and acceptance, but at the same time, they can't move forward and we can't move forward together unless they're ready to deal with reality.
Yeah.
And so we take that step forward into reality, and it does hurt. It's very uncomfortable.
Right.
So-
Well, I think it's so important to talk about what someone can expect and kind of how to judge if maybe they're ready to take that step, and we'll talk more about that. And your retreat was how long ago?
My first retreat was about, Lori, 3 years ago?
Wow.
2 years ago?
It's
And
coming
now
up on 3
you're
years
working
now.
as staff. That's so exciting.
I'm
And yours
training.
was training.
Training as staff.
Yours was how long ago?
November 2007.
2007. And you also are now on the other side.
Yep.
Working
I do the kitchen, and I
training.
do setup, and I take down, and
This is so awesome, and I can't wait to hear about what you're doing, but we're going to go away for a minute, and we'll be right back.
One thing I'll never forget about walking into that building, there was one picketer on the sidewalk and doing something that we certainly don't advocate, but hollered at me, "You're just a baby killer if you walk into that building." And I knew he was right, but it didn't stop me. You know, if he would have said anything else, you know, "Are you hopeless? I'll help you if you're hopeless." Anything else, I probably would have turned around, but just kept walking and ignored him. And from the moment I walked into that building, it was just numb. This just numb coldness in those walls. You know, this was going to be a procedure, and you were going to walk through the steps of this procedure. And they did everything they could to keep you from thinking anything, from feeling anything. When they took me back for my ultrasound that they never offered to show it to me. In fact, there was a curtain between her. She reached, around behind the curtain to do the ultrasound, and then drew the curtain, as she looked at those images that were taken. They didn't care what your reason was or why you were there. The doctor came in and she briefly introduced herself and began. And when she was done, it's like it wasn't real, it was like it wasn't happening until she was done, because when she was done, she took a silver basin and sloshed it around at the foot of my bed and looked in it. Sloshed around the remains of my child and said, "Well, I think we got all of it." And that's when I sat there and I thought, it? What have I done? And they quickly just, put away their things and rush, put away the instruments, put away the tools, and left. Her and the nurse left. And the door closed behind me, and they walked down the hallway with my baby in that basin. And that emptiness just set in immediately. What about the rape victim? What about the incest victim who's been violated? And my response to that is, do we want to turn around and violate her a second time? How much hurt and pain do we want this woman to have to recover from? Because that's where we place her when we advise or we counsel her to exercise her right to abort that baby. We're forcing her right into being violated a second time and having twice the amount of hurt and twice the amount of pain.
We're back and we're talking about healing after abortion. And Lori, I want you to say again what we were talking about during the break, where you said when people call you up and want to know if the time's right for them to take this step of a healing retreat, and they talk it over with you, is this, you know, what does this feel like for them, some of them? What's the feedback you're getting?
Well, besides the fact that it's really difficult to open up to me, and a lot of times I am the first person that hears someone's story that's been buried for years, there's a concurrent element to it. Is there some sort of a relief in being able to get the story out and to have truth come out? It's also can be almost abhorrent at the same time, because you're hearing yourself talk about yourself and what you did or didn't do, and so it's. But there's something very compelling about moving forward, even though we do something that's called approach and avoid. So we approach, then we back up and avoid. And some people do that quite a bit before they actually take hold and do their healing.
How many people are accommodated at one time during a retreat?
It's anywhere from 15 to 20 is our typical amount of folks. So.
And is it 2 nights?
Yes, 2 nights is.
Now, I know Rachel's Vineyard is one of maybe 3 or 4 very prominent healing programs. This is based in Catholic teaching, is it not? But it is open to everybody. You don't have to be Catholic or Christian even to attend.
That's
is that
correct,
right?
yes.
But you have to expect there will be the spiritual component of healing.
Yes.
Which is probably pretty important. I can't imagine not including that. It wouldn't be complete.
People who do come do accept the fact that there is a spiritual component to their existence, and that's would be key for them to be able. And then I give them enough information about the retreat that they can make a decision. Will I be comfortable in this setting that has Catholic components? But we try to set the major ones separate from the actual retreat process. So, for example, on Saturday morning, there is a Mass in the morning, but the retreat doesn't start till breakfast, which follows the Mass. So people who want to participate can go to Mass, and people who don't, we join up at breakfast. So.
And should someone be kind of afraid to tell you they've had an abortion?
I don't think so.
Well, they think, well, she seems like a nice lady, but really, I don't know. Why should I divulge that? Why should I be so, so bare to somebody? How could she understand?
Well, I've had an abortion, and I've worked with hundreds of people who've had abortions, and everyone has a story. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen alone. Oftentimes people think, I made this decision alone, I deserve it, I'm guilty. But all they have to do is talk for a few minutes with me, and I have enough of a objective look at it that I can see all the pressures that were going on. I can see what was working in their lives that led them up to the door and to have the abortion.
Well, I appreciate you, and I've heard you share that before, and I appreciate you sharing it so much, because I think the fear factor of making that call had to be part of, it's a big barrier to think that I can't tell that to somebody, even though they say, to know that you've walked the same walk they're in, and you suffered the same way they suffered, I think is so meaningful that you're doing this now to help people. I'm going to read what I just a few of the symptoms of post-abortion trauma that are so prevalent. Thoughts of suicide, addictions, nightmares, depression. There can be future infertility. Eating disorders are a big one. Trouble being around pregnant women. Trouble bonding with born children. What else would you guys like to add to that list?
How much time do you have?
I know. I don't think the public really understands that not only do you get it, but everybody needs to get it, because if you're hurting and you've had an abortion in your past, you need to understand these symptoms and recognize them and the cause. Right? And you were saying there are so many more.
For me, anyone that knew me prior to my abortion or after my retreat would never believe that those years in between were the same person. They would call you a liar because I was so different. After my abortion, all my grades went downhill, quit sports, slipped my wrists, got married, 5 times, moved around a lot. I still can't live in my hometown because it's just too difficult. And I've had a lot of healing, and it's still really difficult. So there's just so many things. Eating disorder, I weighed 250 pounds a year ago.
You showed me a before picture.
Right.
I couldn't believe the transformation. I was like, that is not you.
No, it's not
You were
me.
a different person, really a different person.
Right. No self-esteem. Never felt like I was good enough to be. I always went to church, but I never felt like I really was good enough to be there. I was afraid someone was going to find out what I really was, regardless of how good I tried to be. So it affects every aspect of your life, and affects your family, and affects the people you know.
Affects the people you know.
Absolutely.
And your closest relationships.
Absolutely. You can't really have close relationships.
And you think, Graham, do you think some of the men out there are really in denial as far as, because, well, it didn't happen physically to me, so it couldn't be the cause of my depression? Or in what way did it affect you?
I had a great deal of difficulty with relationships. I had already left any sort of worship prior to that, so I certainly didn't go back, and that took another 35 years. But the biggest component for men, I think, is the denial. And in my other program, met several fellas who our stories are so similar. We're all 20 and plus years post-abortive before we admitted to the fact. And it's just this whole male, don't speak, don't talk, heaven forbid, don't cry, that thing that we're taught in our culture.
Absolutely.
That you cannot show emotion unless you're yelling and throwing something at the television. That is the only time on a football
Crashing cars.
Right. So just getting in touch with the fact that there is an impact and it is a responsibility after the fact. And certainly, as Lori mentioned, the grief that is there that we're not admitting to. And it's just in there churning.
Eats you.
And at some point, it gets out of control.
Did either of you suffer nightmares? Or was
Not-
that a part
not
of,
me,
of
no.
your... No, because I read about that aspect affecting people so much more. But, I mean, maybe it was one that actually physically went through the abortion awake, and they were in that room and heard all the noises. And I know, the vacuum cleaner keeps coming up. They can't be around the sound of a vacuum cleaner. And that's something that people suffer with a lot, I know. But it was kind of different because you
I did
weren't
not have
awake
that.
and you weren't...
I was never inside the facility.
You weren't inside the facility.
At that point, men were not allowed in, period.
Wow.
Done. At least not in New Jersey, not what the rest of the world was.
Yeah.
So I have no recollection of what happened because I wasn't there.
It's even more amazing that you suffered with so many symptoms, and that it's still there. It's that strong. The grief is that strong. It gets through everything.
Right.
But now, when you're in the groups watching these new people come in for the first time, is there just an instant bond with these people that do you feel just so energized by the healing that they're about to experience? I mean, I can't imagine what it must feel like.
I think that when they first come in, especially with me, because I'm right up there usually with them when they come in, we show them to their rooms. They are terrified, just like I was. And
Quiet.
honestly, if there was any way I could have just turned around without anybody seeing me, I probably would have left, but my husband dropped me off so I couldn't leave.
No car.
On purpose. So
Oh,
I
that's
think, you know, we are really, really excited for them because we know that everyone's going to heal at a different level,
Yeah.
and some it's going to take longer, but we know that everyone is going to feel better when they leave than they did when they got there, and it's going to start.
And
the
most
healing
people
process.
arrive not knowing anybody.
Right. No
all
one,
alone.
Right.
I think that's important because
Right.
people might think, well, if I had someone to go with, I'd go, but oh, I just couldn't go alone. So
But we do have couples that go and sisters that go and
Yeah.
mother and daughter
So
that go,
that
grandmothers
can
that
happen
go.
too.
Sure.
bring support people
Right.
with
Well,
you.
because they're affected and they need the healing as well.
That's true.
Right.
There's so much to say about this program, and it's so wonderful, and it's changing lives so well. And I'm so in awe of what you guys are doing. And I got to say, for people watching, Lori comes from a long ways away, way down I-5, and Tamara and Graham have done this over and over. Nobody here is being paid. They're all here because they want to help.
Yeah.
All of you guys are here.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not like you went through the program, went, well, I feel better. Thanks, bye, you know. No, you guys are in the trenches every day for this. Anytime anybody asks you, you gladly show up and tell your story in the hopes that it will help someone you don't even know.
Right.
And I think it's very important when you look at what the other side does. They have their hand out to make money every time you turn around, taking money from women or the taxpayers. Planned Parenthood made $114 million profit in the 2006 you know, annual report. So, you know, you guys are here doing what you do out of love for people you may never meet. And many of them you will meet. But I think it's important that the public realizes what's going on after healing. The people stay and want to help others heal. And I think I really honor you for that. And I think it's very important for the people of Portland to understand not only is Lori available to, you know, help somebody decide if this is the right time for them to make this journey, but you guys are always available to speak out for the truth and for life, no matter what. I mean, it's an inconvenience to come and be on a show like this and be on the radio and talk and stand in vigil in front of clinics like I know you're doing. You certainly stick your neck out, you know, in employment for, you know, and I thank you and I honor you for what you're doing, and I know you're saving lives. I know it, and good luck with your retreats. We're going to put the website on.
Okay.
Quickly tell me, when are the next dates?
April 24th through 26th in Portland, and June 5th through 7th in Eugene.
Oh, that's exciting. I hope you fill up. I know you will. And good luck, and all of you in your new training.
Thank
and
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.